Welcome to another Round the Rotary with me, your host, JP Warren, and with us today I have John Spath, or Jonathan Spath, the Senior Vice President of Drilling and Productions at Talos Energy. And thank you for coming in today, John. How you doing today?
JP, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, well, there you go. How are you today?
Thank you.
Well, there we go. Is this your first podcast you've ever done?
It is my first podcast.
Well, it feels like it's my first, too. Every time I do this, it's always one of those things. It's like, okay, take two, take three. So
yeah, I mean, podcast doesn't count like a Facebook video or anything. No, that's not.
You can edit
totally
it.
different.
You can edit it, and also if you don't like it, you just scrap it.
Because I do have a lot of TikToks out there.
Okay, well, yeah. So I joined TikTok during the COVID lockdown.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I have to join your TikTok group.
I hope you don't find, because I don't have that much up there. But let's get this started, man.
Yeah,
Give us
no problem.
Before we start. I know that you're an avid listener, and you asked how many people give their bios before, right. And you listening so much, you had no idea. And I said pretty much everybody gives their bio. So let's go ahead and give your bio real quick. Kind of a short little summary of what you...
Summary, well, I graduated from USL in 1995, right in the middle of a thriving economy. So coming out of mechanical engineering in 1995, I guess there was about 22 graduates in mechanical engineering, of which only 2 of us had job offers, when we graduated. So it was a very, very slow time. Oil prices were sitting in the $15 range. And living in Lafayette, you're used to that culture of oil and gas.
Right.
And to come out of college and not really have any job opportunities, it was pretty tough.
But is that where you're from, Lafayette?
Well, my dad was in the military, so I moved all over the place when I was younger, but was in Lafayette since I was in 3rd grade.
Okay.
My mom settled in Lafayette. So I was fortunate enough to be one of the 2 guys that actually had a job prior to graduating college. And I went to work for a company called McDermott in Morgan City. They built offshore structures, offshore facilities. I felt it was good for mechanical engineering for me to get involved in construction, project management.
Right.
Because to be honest, from the very beginning, all of us really didn't want to get into oil and gas because we saw our family struggle through all the downturns in Lafayette and what happened to Lafayette over the years. So we were pretty much anti-oil and gas. So I viewed McDermott as an opportunity to get construction management skills.
So Lafayette, was that, I mean, I know there's certain industries all over the coast, such as, Houma, Lafayette. I mean, certain industries are really affected when oil prices drop. I mean, the entire city pretty much feels it.
Yeah, so Lafayette was called the hub city at one point. I didn't know if you knew that.
I did know that, but I was waiting for you to chime that in.
Yeah, so hub city. So when Lafayette in the late 80s, early 90s, when Lafayette really got affected, I mean, it really hurt all the families. You had people losing their houses, businesses shutting down. St. Thomas More, who Chris Zombreaker with Capital, went there back then.
Managing partner of Capital Petroleum Consultants.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, STM went from probably 500 students down to about 150 in total. It definitely devastated the local economy.
So you said you were one of 2, and obviously not to get too much on this tangent. You said you were you're one of 2 people out of a class of 20.
Yeah.
So how did you position yourself to get a job versus the other 18?
Well, I had very good grades.
Okay.
And it also helped that I was able to communicate effectively. I was an engineer that interviewed quite well, expressed my experiences to McDermott,
right?
And they were looking for guys that had great communication skills because they had to manage projects. They had to work with partners, through other vendors coming in and do work. We had to communicate with customers, make sure we could work and communicate on all levels. So I had to communicate from the welder the whole way up to a project manager for like an Exxon.
Right.
And so you had to have a skill set.
And that's something that my father brought up with me. It's like, you don't want the best student. You don't want the 4.0 GPA student, because that person's usually down there focused on their work, just, nose in on their studies. However, you kind of want someone kind of the middle of that actually has the social life, that has the community service, that has the ability to converse anyone from. So when I was working offshore, it gave me the confidence talking to anyone from the roughneck, as you said, to CEO level.
That's correct.
So
I support what your dad said. I believe that the engineers with a GPA between a 2.8 to a 3.2 are typically the ones that are a little bit more well-rounded and diverse versus the guys that want to come in with a 3.940 and they're more R&D type. Don't want to introvert.
Don't want to get their hands dirty in the field.
Exactly.
Just want to put everything on paper.
But for what we do in oil and gas, whether it's production, drilling, or construction, the well-rounded engineers are the better ones for those jobs.
Okay.
Now you need smart people in your organization. Don't get me wrong.
Like us.
Yeah, like you.
Like us.
But at the same time, those are the guys that can help support the guys that can really effectively communicate and manage projects.
Right. So. Get a channel or a message across. So
that is
go on.
So after worked at McDermott for a couple years, ended up getting a job offer from Marathon. So went to work for Marathon. Worked there from 1998 until 2006.
Onshore?
Offshore.
Okay.
All offshore. Really focused on the first thing I did at Marathon was facilities engineer. Did that for about a year and a half, and then moved over to a production foreman, which I was in the field, a field guy.
All right.
Where I ran a couple of fields for Marathon on a rotation 7 and 7, and then at that point I had an opportunity to move into drilling. And
did you ever do drilling before?
Did not.
Okay.
Did not. And so it was a great opportunity. A guy by the name of Carl Hubacher, he retired from Marathon. I was at a point in my career where I was looking for something different.
Right.
And he gave me an opportunity. Went on board over there with a guy by the name of Jerry Beermore was my boss. Jerry currently works at Talos Energy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it came back full cycle, and once I got into drilling, it was about the same time that Marathon got a new CEO.
Okay.
And when we got the new CEO, he didn't like our Gulf of Mexico portfolio that much in any of our exploration wells. So he wanted to focus a lot on international.
Okay.
So once I moved into drilling, the first thing they said is move to Houston. And then they said, all right, but now we're going to make you work 28 and 28 in Africa, in the UK. And I was like, well, why do I have to move to Houston if I want to work 28 and 28? So then they said, all right, yeah, that's right. Stay in Lafayette and just work 28 and 28. So I did that the whole way up until 2005. And I was really looking for an opportunity to get back to the States, to be home every night with the family.
So where were you rotating out
of? I was working in the North Sea, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea.
Okay.
And I really rotated depending on where the rigs were.
Okay.
So I was working either well site or on land as a drilling engineer for in Equatorial Guinea. Gotcha. And then in 2005, my daughter was born. I was at a point where I was ready to be home more often.
Right.
And so I ended up, and it wasn't an opportunity to come back to the U.S. for Marathon other than to do land. So when I approached Marathon and told them I was interested in staying home every night, they offered me to do some land drilling in Oklahoma, and I said, well, I think there's better opportunities out there in deep water in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico. Okay. So I ended up deciding to leave there, and I started consulting.
Okay.
And immediately got picked up by a company called Deep Gulf Energy.
Yeah.
Actually, Mariner. Working for a guy named Bill Fisher who stayed at Mariner for a few months, and then he went over to Deep Gulf Energy, and I ended up following him over to Deep Gulf Energy and stayed there until 2011, and then at that point picked up with Talos Energy.
Okay, so 2011 you picked up with Talos.
It was 2012 that I got on Talos, late 2012.
So my background, I broke out offshore. It was at Noble Drilling. And you're right. There is such a mind shift when you go from offshore to onshore market.
It's totally different.
It really is. I mean, it's you start looking at, for example, you're doing the budgets. I mean, for these offshore rigs, like 5 million, risers, 10 million BOPs, and then you get here, it's like, oh, they want drill pipe for 11 cents a foot. Yeah, sure. Who gives a shit? It's 11 cents a foot. Yeah,
exactly.
The scope is so much different.
It is.
And faster, I feel like, on land versus offshore. But I can definitely see how, I know a lot of people in the oil and gas industry that have been offshore their entire careers. And that's just, It's what they love. They love what they do. You know what I mean?
That is correct. Offshore, it's every well is a challenge.
Yes.
Unless you start doing some development drilling. But even then, if you drill in different fault blocks, you face different challenges. But it's something it's always, like I said, it's a challenge, and you live for that. You live for going out there and doing each well you drill. It was something different.
And you're finding on land lately, it's like once you figure out a formation or once you figure out a basin, it's like, okay, well, this is what you have to do: A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, that's when you cut and paste procedures.
Exactly.
In deep water you can't cut and paste.
Exactly. I mean, every day is a challenge. So, going into this, talking about offshore, and so you've been there since 2012.
That's correct.
And you worked your way up to senior vice.
Started off as a deep water drilling manager. Well, started off actually as a drilling engineer, deep water drilling engineer. Quickly moved into the deep water drilling manager spot. In the downturn in 2015, I was approached with taking over production operations.
Okay.
They were looking for a change in culture within the production operations organization. Our VP of Ops at the time had left Talos, so there was a void there for about 4 or 5 months. They were trying not to fill that spot because we were in the process of letting people go,
right,
and reducing headcount. But after about 4 months, they decided they needed some leadership in that position. We weren't going to be drilling many wells, so Tim Duncan approached me and said, "Would you be interested in moving over to head up the production group?"
Did you hesitate on that, or was that something you just jumped into?
I said, at that time I was a little bit hesitant, because I was stepping into an organization where I knew there had to be extreme budget cuts, which involved also layoffs in a down market, and it was going to be a lot of challenges. And what I was stepping into was essentially going to be viewed as, somebody that wasn't going to be liked right away, because I was going to have to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
In order to help the company out.
Yeah.
So I went from being a drilling manager where I was in my zone, where I knew how to drill wells. I had a good team underneath me, was in a real spot of being comfortable, to one of making really tough decisions. And so I was hesitant at first, but Tim and Steve Heitzman, who was my boss at the time, essentially said, "Hey, you're walking into an organization that's a blank piece of paper. You get to put your handprint on all this. And would you rather that, or take over production from somebody that's considered, a leader in that realm, production operations, and then you have to follow up that guy. Here you're stepping into a spot where you can message what you want to message. You can create the organization the way you want to create it."
And that's I think that personally, right now with everything going on in the industry, currently with people taking new roles, either being let go and having to pursue something they never thought previously. Every position in my career has been something new and that I had no idea about or no confidence with. Whether it was HSC, whether it was living in Saudi, doing country manager. Sounds pretty important, but I had 9 people under me. But every position, I was not comfortable or confident in stepping in that role, just because it's one of those stresses that you're kind of thrust into. But that being said, I think that's a crucial message for people out there listening right now, those 2 people that might listen, you and me, to say, look, if you step up into a role, whether you're comfortable with it or not, take it, jump in.
You have to be positive with every move you make,
right?
And a lot of people don't like change.
No.
But in this market, what you'll start to see happening, and you've seen it in some other companies, is guys, you can move from drilling manager to an HSE role, or into production. I'm seeing that in some reorgs, or production moving into maybe some well recompletion roles, or what they try to do is create the organization with the best people they have.
Right.
And sometimes people have to move around and take roles that it may not be what they want to do, but at some point you have to take that role and learn from it, and think that there's going to be something better on the backside of it.
That's exactly. I got a buddy who's over at a company, and he went from operations manager pretty much, and now he's a pumper. Yeah. But he's like, I'm in the field again. I'm kind of freshening up some skills. I'm learning it. So he's taking that with a. You're right, being positive with it.
You have to be positive with every move.
Well, so I kind of want to go into more of your current role and your current situation right now, and kind of talk about a little of the offshore market.
Yes.
Right now, with so much changing, so much, I guess, whirlwind shit show, whatever you want to deem it. I guess in this new market, has your main criteria changed when it's selecting whether it's offshore, either rigs or whether it's selecting vendors? Has anything changed or shifted in the past 90 days for you?
Well, in the past, we used to evaluate all the vendors. We take a look, and it's a combination of things. HSE record, experience of the personnel, making sure they're capable of doing the job, and their training, the reputation of the company. That was critical when we evaluate all vendors. Is have they gone out and proven that they can execute projects safely?
Right.
And then of course cost comes into play. In this new market, we put HSE at a premium.
Okay.
Because what we can't afford when we're doing a limited amount of projects is to have HSE incidents, and that affects the entire company. But at the same time, we're also taking a look at the financial stability of the vendors.
Yeah.
Because that's critical. We have to make sure that, one, are they paying their people, or are their people unhappy that may cause one of them to do something that isn't smart, or are they paying their vendors? Are we at risk of getting any liens filed against us? Even though we pay the vendors for their work, they have a whole network of other things going on behind the scenes that we don't have knowledge of. So it's important to make sure that we're working with companies that have the financial stability to execute our projects.
So it's interesting. Usually when there's a downturn or activity starts decreasing, people say HSC is important, and all, but you see it kind of taking a back seat a lot of times, because you want the cheapest out there, the cheapest service out there, and so the fact that you actually put HSC up higher is I commend that.
HSC is absolutely critical, in any industry.
Right.
And I believe oil and gas is one of the safest industries in the world. Whether on land or Gulf of Mexico, we're under the under BSEE, which is very strict in regulations and HSE, but our preference, we want to be there. We want to be a top tier when it comes to HSE performance. It's critical to make sure that guys offshore work safe.
Right.
And they go home to their families.
Right.
And that's one of our biggest concerns and challenges that we face right now is still maintaining that strong HSE culture, all right, and making sure guys don't feel like they have to cut corners to get a job done faster.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to be perceived as doing something wrong, so they won't report something, because if they do something wrong, then they fear of losing their job. So one of the messages we send out to our crews weekly, we talk to the offshore guys weekly. We have weekly HSC meetings with the guys in the field. We harp on HSC performance. Like, if you have to shut the job down, regroup everybody, and come up with a new plan, let's do that. The last thing we want to have happen is somebody have the mindset or the concern, well, if I stop the job, then I'm going to be perceived as a troublemaker.
Yeah, against
me that's a black mark against that individual. And then when we have layoffs, he's going to get let go.
The first to go.
So it's one to make sure that everyone needs to understand is, we believe in the strong HSE culture. We want you to work safe, and no one's going to be affected if they stop the job or they have to take longer than planned.
Right.
Just as long as they work safe.
So that kind of segues into, I guess, the next question I have. I mean, you mentioned having weekly communications with guys offshore, or guys and girls offshore. You mentioned communicating HSC being of utmost importance, to stop the job, et cetera, and all that stuff. But how do you, I guess, maintain morale and maintain motivation and for people to believe that, because I mean, if you're working, if you're, roughneck or raspat offshore, you don't want to be the guy that stops the job because there's outside pressure. So how do you communicate that in this day and age, I guess, how do you keep people motivated and understand that, hey, look, what we're saying about HSC, we still mean that. Like, this still is our kind of our core value.
Well, it's being involved, and the guys in the field, guys and girls in the field, like you said.
Yes.
The personnel in the field.
There you go.
All right. It's really critical to be engaged with them, communicate on a regular basis.
Right.
You go to the crew changes. I really encourage our superintendents in particular, to hit the crew changes, be face to face with the personnel so that they can see it in your eyes.
Yeah.
The engineers, I really encourage, go out to your fields, talk to the guys, because the worst thing that happens offshore is, guys work essentially on an island.
Right.
When they're on an offshore platform. And one guy across the Gulf of Mexico could hear this one little rumor about something, and next it spreads throughout the Gulf of Mexico, to all your facilities. Yep. And then when you finally hear about it, it's like, whoa, hold up, guys.
Yeah, this kind of escalated.
This is, this is not accurate.
Right.
So I encourage engineers to really get involved, talk to the guys. I can guarantee you pretty much all of our production engineers talk to all their platforms on a daily basis. We have HSC reps that work the fields that communicate the importance of HSC to all offshore personnel. I participate in a lot of foreman meetings, conference calls with the field. One of the good things we had that we learned a lot about during this downturn was I'm gonna put a plug in here for Microsoft Teams.
All right.
That's really helped quite a bit.
I don't think they're listening, but okay, go on.
But Microsoft, it definitely gave us a new way to communicate with the guys in the field.
Right.
To the point to where I'm like, get cameras on every platform.
Yeah. Now it's the new norm.
Because when we do these safety meetings, I can actually see the guys. And they can see me.
You can see if they're engaged or not.
Yeah, and it's important to have that visual and not just listen to a voice. And that's how you try to keep morale up. Talk about, hey, the successes you're having.
Yeah.
We can't control the commodity price, but what we can control is the projects we're working
today
in that budget, and making sure everyone goes home safe and make sure everyone understands our future. Even in a downturn, we can grow.
Right.
We still have growth in a downturn, whether it's through, doing limited drilling or acquisition. There's a lot of opportunity out there. We're a pretty strong financial company,
right.
Financially strong. And that's the main focus, is to deliver that message. Hey, we're here to stay. You're part of the team. We want you here, and that keeps morale up.
So that's kind of similar to what Jason Churchill said, the podcast he didn't listen to last time. He mentioned that when I'm just messing with you. So he mentioned that transparency was crucial. Transparency, communication. Just as you said, we don't know what's going to happen to commodity prices next week, 2 weeks, 3 months. But what we can do is focus on today, our job today.
And one of the advantages, for Talos and just in general, is a lot of our production is hedged.
Okay.
So we have budgets that are really only affected by that little stub that isn't hedged.
Mm-hmm.
So we go into the whole year with a scope already determined, because we already have hedges laid for 2020. So we're not having to do as much knee-jerk reaction as some operators that aren't hedged. They have to go from whether it's a facilities maintenance budget of like $50 million down to, hey, let's cut it down to 15. We've been able to really manage that whole aspect. Thanks to a good job by our financial team and CEO and his leadership.
Right.
We've been able to sit there and manage our budgets and still do the projects that are necessary and do them safely and on time and on budget. And when the guys start to see a lot of that, they get excited. They get excited when we're out there going to their fields, and they recognize that, hey, these guys, we're not slowing down. They're fixing the things that we need fixed in our platform, which means that they believe in that facility and the profitability of that facility, even at this commodity price, that they're willing to keep things up and running and make things safe for us.
And also,
that goes a long way for them.
That just ties into what you say is what you deliver, That's correct. Say is what you do. And if they see that through actions, you're right, that does keep it up. So moving on, I kind of want to touch base, what are the difficulties from a capital perspective you're seeing in 2020, 2021, and are partners hardened to pin down for AFEs?
Yeah, definitely. 2020 and going into 2021 is definitely going to be a challenge. Working with partners, because not every company has the same goals, the same objectives.
Okay.
And for instance, you may have a partner or potential partner that wants to drill a well on a lease that's going to expire on primary term, and they know for sure, hey, I got to have this in my budget, or we're going to lose the lease.
Right.
We need to drill that well. We're looking for a partner. Well, at the same time, they may be actually partners with us and another prospect that we think they're going to participate, but then they can't because they got to control their own portfolio. So when you have limited capital budgets, that's a big challenge. And as a company, you have to sit down and determine what's more important. And that's the big challenge. It's trying to get stuff drilled. We still need to do drilling.
Yeah.
We just can't go out there and do all M&A, and getting partners on board in the plan forward.
So do you find that I guess dealing with that, whatever you want to call it, critical path or critical projects, or you might go partner here, but they might do you find that your communication has that increased over the past 90 days with everything going on right now in the oil and gas industry?
It has. We've conducted a lot more partner meetings.
Okay.
Trying to make sure there's alignment. And that's critical, especially when everyone's going through their budgets. So everyone's starting pretty much here in the next month or two. Hopefully have their budgets kind of wrapped up, at least for board approval, September, October timeframe. So you're scrambling right now to determine, what can you include in your budget, what prospects you want to participate in. Do you want to spend all your money on just development wells? You still want to do some exploration wells? Can you get the partners? You don't want to do stuff 100% right now. You want to have a diverse portfolio. So you're definitely looking for partners. They're just harder to find because they also have their primary objectives. They may have some development wells that they need to drill, and it may take up all of their budget. And that doesn't allow them to participate so you may have partners in a lease that has no wells, and you're the operator, and you're proposing, let's drill a well next year. And your partners in this lease, but they may turn around and say, well, we don't want to drill that because we need our money over here. And that's the biggest challenge.
Are you but that's kind of going back to my question. Are you finding people that are more forthright in kind of discussing their plans, or because of everything going on right now, everyone's kind of head in the sand, or people, so they are, so they're very candid. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes it a little easier.
It does.
Yeah.
Everyone, we got to just work together through this downturn. Make sure everyone comes out stronger. And we'll do some stuff that sometimes isn't necessarily what we want to do, but at the same time we understand the importance to the partner.
Right.
But at the same time we kind of make it known that, hey, in the future, if you're in the same situation,
we hope you do
the same thing for us.
Well, I mean, that's what a partnership is.
That's correct.
Give and take here and there. So what kind of through this, what was a month ago or a month and a half ago, it was $37 below. I mean, what are the biggest operational challenges that y'all see in the U.S. Gulf? I mean, is it lack of supply boats, the quality of people, investment, what?
One of the and I go back and I hate to harp on this, is just maintaining that culture in an offshore work environment that you can't cut corners.
Right.
You have to do the right thing. It's just making sure everyone understands the importance of that, because that's one thing you can't control. I can control budgets. I can't control commodity prices, but if we're hedged, we have our budgets defined. I can control what projects we do, what projects we want to remove from the budget. But what I can't control is that individual or a couple of individuals doing something that they shouldn't do that impacts the whole company.
Right.
Whether it results in some environmental incident or somebody seriously getting hurt or a fatality. And that's one of our biggest concerns. My biggest concerns operationally is making sure we maintain that culture that, hey, we want to work safe, be efficient in producing oil and gas. The next thing that's going to be a challenge is really finding the experienced personnel. And it's not the experienced personnel that we're thinking about as far as our production operations, because we can actually really kind of dictate what operators we have on our facilities,
Right.
but it's what the third parties bring out and provide in the services, to us. Whether it's one of the major vendors that their cost reductions may have included, hey, we have to cut the high wage earners, which are typically the more experienced
Right.
people, and go with the less experienced, and we're still going to charge the same rates as the more experienced person. And then we get guys offshore that don't have that experience or don't have the proper training, and mainly because their company chose to eliminate the more experienced individuals. So experienced personnel, I think, is going to be a big challenge. And then you throw in just all the services in general. Trying to maintain a solid vendor base is critical. Making sure that you have vendors out there, multiple vendors for each service, is absolutely critical. Boats, this downturn's, slightly different than the other ones.
Slightly. Go on with this word of slightly, because what I've heard, this is our 80s, but worse on steroids.
Yeah, this one has definitely been a challenge because everyone was still trying to recover from the last one.
Yeah.
And then and now, whether it's marine transportation where vessel owners have just decided to throw in the towel, where they were working with banks and trying to get their payments, and all of a sudden now they have this happen, and people just shut off all transportation, and they unman platforms and cut boats loose, and now the banks are struggling with figuring out what to do with this asset, which the owner's like, look, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm done.
You want it's yours.
Yeah, take it. I'm done with the stress. So it's important to maintain that a good solid vendor base. Even, and that includes even the whole way up to drilling contractors. This downturn has really impacted the shelf in particular when it comes to the drilling rig market. I forget how many. They were marketing, all the contractors in total were marketing like 8 to 9 jackup rigs last year. Now I'm hearing it's down to 2 or 3. And it's very concerning, that it's come down to that, because even now there's only one jackup rig working in the Gulf of Mexico.
But it's funny. I mean, I may be wrong through my old age, but I remember back in 2010 when I was at Noble, I remember, the rigs the offshore rigs that were being built were built on spec. There wasn't a demand for them. They were built on spec, so it flooded the market with all these high spec offshore mobile offshore drilling units, right? Whether it's jackups, drill ships, whatever. And I remember the day rates were like $550, $650 for some of the new stuff. Remember?
Oh yeah.
And now it's like, I mean, there has been an oversupply of rigs, and there has been this. So now they're junking the rigs.
They're junking them.
Yeah, they're junking the rigs that are what, 7 years old?
Yes.
6 years old. It's insane.
Yeah, 10 years old.
So I mean, it seems like not a necessary correction, hiccup, obstacle, whatever you want to call it, but it's definitely something that's kind of we've known about for quite some time. And I'm not saying we could predict or any bullshit like that, but this is kind of something that's kind of correcting itself, But hearing those numbers is still kind of shocking.
Right.
It is. So, one last thing I want to touch on before we kind of wrap this up. You're bringing up the word culture a lot, and I think that is something so crucial in this day and age, because right now, not only just in the oil and gas industry, but every industry, you're hearing about uncertainty, like, people getting cut, am I going to have a job? Oh, I just lost my job. I know this guy lost his job, or this guy or girl lost their job. Like, there's so much uncertainty, and there's so much pessimism, So I guess besides, being transparent and all that stuff, I mean, what advice would you give to people that listen to maintain a certain culture and be real with it? Have a realistic approach.
I go back when I started at Marathon in 1998. I guess it was 1999. We hit like $12 oil.
Okay.
And being new at Marathon, and being relatively fresh out of college, I was shocked. I was sitting there like, what's going on? There was a lot of people standing around in the break room talking about, oh my God, oil prices are $12 a barrel. Am I going to lose my job? And it seemed like everyone was more focused and talking to one another about what could they do to protect themselves when they lose their job, instead of being focused on their job, and And I had a senior manager at Marathon in the Lafayette office at the time. I asked him, I said, what's all, everyone's concerned, everyone's sitting in the break rooms and talking about, is there going to be a layoff? And I asked him, I said, is there going to be a layoff? And he said, well, do you participate in those conversations? And I said, not really. I said, I just kind of stay focused on what I'm supposed to do here, which is, facilities engineering. And he said, and that's the key. Stay focused. Control what you can control, which is your job, your performance, working with the vendors, and hopefully everything will work out and people will recognize that. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. And you could be a solid solid engineer, solid employee, and budgets just have to be cut, unfortunately.
And that's under control.
But your leadership, and if people see that, when this thing starts to rebound and there's other opportunities, you may be the first one that someone may recommend because they see how you carried yourself through the downturn.
Yeah.
And that's critical.
No, that's a good point. It also goes back to what you were saying. I mean, everything that you approach, you have to have the right mindset.
Right mindset. Positive.
And that's regardless. So thanks for coming on today. And everyone that's listening, if you'd like to get in touch or have any questions for John Spath with Talos Energy, you can email us at roundtherotary@cap-petro.com. Again, it's roundtherotary at cap-petro.com. And one more plug, Capital Petroleum Consultants. If you want to discuss with us about any well site supervision or project engineering, management roles, whether it's drilling, production, or completions, you can just touch base with me or go to our website, capitalpetroleums.com. Would you like to give any messages or anything like that?
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to give a shout out to my son, Michael Spath. He's graduating from Tompkins
What's going on, Michael?
This year. Actually, graduation's been delayed. He's graduating next Sunday. However, they just had their homecoming dance. Prom dance.
How was that? Was that virtual?
Well, it was a private prom dance.
What does that mean?
All right, meaning it was at a venue not authorized by KDISD. Okay, so some parents pitched in, decorated some bar.
Okay.
They shut it down for the night for just the high school seniors. They had all these seniors pull up and they had their own little prom, which was very interesting. And then I was fortunate enough to be the volunteer of the after parties.
Okay.
And what I didn't realize these days are after parties are days.
What?
So it wasn't just, hey, let's go to someone's house after prom. Let's go to Galveston, for a night that leads into a second night. And that was very challenging, chaperoning, anywhere.
When did you find out?
Sunday night.
Oh God!
So it was very challenging watching, these future leaders of of the world down there, like we used to be when we were seniors, and go down there and watch them celebrate, going off to college. So I want to say, good job on Michael. He did an excellent job.
And is he going to college in the fall?
He is going to a place that is dear to your heart. But he's not going to be a Yale leader.
MIT, where I went.
He's going to go to A&M, believe it or not.
Well, you know what? That A&M. I don't know if it's a fun fact. It's harder to get in A&M than Harvard and MIT combined.
I bet. A&M was definitely a challenge for him.
Yeah.
But he's looking forward to it.
Well, congrats.
He said he's going to reach out to you to learn all the cheers and everything that you used to coax on.
Okay, we can wrap this up. Right now. Well, anyway, John, I appreciate it. Michael, congratulations. If you are listening, maybe now, maybe in the future, but congratulations. Look forward to seeing you at Northgate sometime. And John, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, JP.
Again, this is John Spath, Senior Vice President of Drilling and Production at Talos Energy. And thank you for joining us at Around the Rotary. And we'll talk to you soon. Exit music.